we are in Proverbs chapter 17. That is where we are. And as we have stated, because there are those that aren't in this class, aren't in the Proverbs class, that if you want to know the level of wisdom that Solomon had, you're going to find it expressed here. If you want to improve your life in innumerable ways, it will start here. And Proverbs, what is a proverb? A proverb is a short statement of wisdom, to impart wisdom. And as the book starts out, it says that there are some enigmas or dark sayings or riddles, that there are some that are going to be more difficult than others. And it's going to take a little bit more of an effort. And sometimes we can read something and have no idea what that's saying, or come away with a conclusion that's in the wrong direction, or a rather shallow conclusion when there's something far greater there. And as we have already done in this class, there are some where the meaning can go in two different directions. And they're not contradicting each other. Both directions could be true, and I would suggest is meant to be that way. That both are intended, whether you go one direction or another direction, both are intended to be true. Both would be true statements, and that a proverb can hold a lot of information, a lot of a principle. It can teach extraordinary things, but no proverb is working alone. There are themes that we find in the book of Proverbs. There are proverbs that work together, and they all work together as a book, and all work together in teaching you from different directions. And yes, there are things that are repeated verbatim. There are a few of them, not all of them. And there are those that sound very similar. Well, it's continuing to teach you. So we start with chapter 17 and beginning in verse 1. And this is a theme that we've already seen prior to chapter 17. And that is this comparison of having little, physically, little, with something that is of great significance, something that is actually priceless, as compared to having a lot of wealth, and then you don't have that quality, whatever's under discussion. So, but let's explain. Okay, so better is a dry morsel with quietness. So this is one of the what we call the better verses. It uses the word better. Better is a dry morsel with quietness than a house full of feasting with strife. So in this, quietness or peace is of a greater value than wealth itself. Quietness, peace, a place where there is some sort of well, we just use the word peace again, is far better than having all the feasting and there is nothing but strife there. And yes, you can have very wealthy people who inside their family, inside that home, is a lot of strife. The wealth cannot buy peace. The wealth, there are some problems that money can solve. There's some problems that it can solve. There are many major problems that it cannot solve, that you can throw dollar after dollar after dollar in it, and it's just not being solved. It continues on. Now we go to verse 2. And verse 2 is going to also link up with verse 6 in this, but a wise servant will rule over a son who causes shame, and will share an inheritance among the brothers. So here is this wise servant. A wise servant is beneficial. He or she is worthwhile, valuable, productive, does not bring shame, but the opposite of it. A wise servant is someone you can trust. A wise servant is not going to stab you in the back or betray you. A wise servant is not going to do that. But a son who causes shame is nothing but that. He's not rising above that. It's that of shame. And that, though a child who is causing shame is not one you can trust. All right, and I'll say that again. A child who's causing shame is not someone you can trust. Until there is a change in that person, while you would want to trust them, while you definitely love them, because that is a son or that is a daughter, you love that person, yet they're the ones trying to burn the bridges. They're the ones that do not have a close relationship and do not want that close relationship. They're the ones who are causing the shame. And this goes very well with Proverbs 19 and verse 26. He who mistreats his father and chases away his mother is a son who causes shame and brings reproach. This is a child who is, for whatever reason, the resentful child or the one that is foolish, who despises the parents, and this does nothing but bring shame and reproach on the family, is what it does. Now, can that son be trusted? Well, in that condition, no, he can't be trusted. And you wouldn't trust someone like that, not after being betrayed again and again and again and again, of who has fed you all these years, who has sheltered you all these years, who has clothed you all these years, who has given you everything you needed all these years. You are healthy now because someone provided for you. Who was it? It's the one you're chasing away. It's the one that you are mistreating at this moment. And what gratitude, what thankfulness is that? Well, there is none. There is none. That is a spoiled child. That's a child that is more of a beast than anything else. And that's not a good condition. But we go to verse 6 just because these two are linked together by way of theme. Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children is their father. All right, so this really is showing a different side of all this. In Psalm 127, verses 3 and 4, we have, "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord." And this verse, this proverb, 17 and verse 6, "Children's children are the crown of old men, and the glory of children is their father." This speaks of the home and family in a positive light. You do realize that. This speaks of home and family in the best sort of light, because home and family was established by God from Genesis chapter 1, from the beginning. Now, who do you think would want to destroy that? Who would want to destroy the family? Satan. Yeah, absolutely. Anything that God creates is good, and anything that God creates, Satan would want to corrupt, to destroy, to do whatever he could. So anyone today and this is just a side issue, anyone today who speaks of the home, who speaks of the family as something that needs to be a thing of the past, just relegated to the distant past, who are they working for? They're saying the same thing that Satan has been saying for a long time. Whose voice is actually whose side are they speaking for? And on whose behalf? Well, it would be, in fact, Satan, whether they know it or not. And of course, they probably wouldn't. But here is this idea, going back to verse 2, of a wise servant. Well, he's more trusted than that son who's causing shame. Far more trusted, and far more closer, and far more of a relationship that is there. Now we go to verse 3. The refining pot is for silver and the furnace for gold, but the Lord tests the hearts. All right, so this is one of those things where if you are unfamiliar with some of the illustrations, some of the terms that are found in the text, not just Proverbs, then this may be something that comes off as kind of an odd sort of thing. Okay, so the refining pot is for silver and the furnace for gold. Okay, that sounds like a factual thing. That seems kind of obvious. But the Lord tests the hearts. The Lord knows what's a refining pot for? Well, precisely what it says is for refining the silver. It's for refining the gold. What does that mean? That means the silver, it's impure. All right? You've got to take the impurities out of the silver, because any metal, precious or not, can have impurities in it. And if you want the element, if you want that metal in its purest form that you can have it, it's going to have to go through a process where it is melted, and the dross, that's anything, we'll just say, let's just talk about silver. The dross is separated from the silver. That's the only way you can do it. You can't do it any other way. If there's another way, I don't know what it is. But it is put into this refining pot, into this furnace, and then the dross is then skimmed off the top and tossed away. What is left is a more pure silver.
Can't get 100% pure though.
Well, no, that's true. Yeah, from a physical standpoint, what Tim said is that you can never have something absolutely pure in the material realm. Okay, you can't have pure gold. You can get close, and I think you have like those gold bars, as though I've ever seen one, may have stamped on it the degree of purity that is there, the guaranteed degree of purity. And it's never 100%. It's like 99 point something. It's like ivory. Is that the commercial? Anyway, never mind that. Yeah. The soap, not the elephant tusk. Anyway, when we're talking about souls, however, we're not talking about gold, we're not talking about silver. When we're talking about the human heart, which is in this, your mind, your soul, God tests the hearts. Can He purify us? Yes. Yes, He can. Now, in places such as Ezekiel chapter 22, specifically verses 17 to 22, He says, you all have become dross. Well, what is dross? That's impurities in the silver or the gold. You're not the gold. You're the dross that's in the gold. And this has got to be refined. This has got to be refined, which means He's going to have to do some things. And in the book of Ezekiel, they're already in captivity. And there's going to be 70 years of that captivity. And there's going to be 70 years where there's going to be some dross removed. God is going to do it. And if we think of metals such as our silver or our gold going into a refining pot, going into a furnace. All right, for the gold, if the gold could have any feeling, or the silver could sense anything, that'd be a painful thing.
Is that the same thing that God did with the children of Israel as they walked in the desert for 40 years? He was kind of...
Yes. Okay, so the question is concerning the 40 years in the wilderness. where they weren't supposed to be 40 years in the wilderness. By their own disobedience, they were going to go into Canaan. They were on the doorstep. And they sent 12 spies. Sounds good to me. Sounded good to Moses. Not comparing myself to Moses. But it sounded good. All right, but 10 of the spies, that is a great majority. 10 of the spies come back and say, we can't do it. There's giants in the land. 2 of the spies, Caleb and Joshua, was it Joshua? Okay. That they came back and said, well, of course we can take it. Yeah, all this other stuff, while it is true, we've got God. What else do we need? All right, why the hesitation? Why even a moment's wondering of whether he could do it or not, much less coming to this conclusion that we cannot do it. And so because of that, they refused to go in, and because of that, God kept them 40 years in the wilderness, and there was the majority of the people alive in that day died. Not in one day, but in those 40 years. And after that 40 years, you've got another generation. They would have been 20 years and younger at the time that the spies came back, and they refused to go in. Now you have those who can go in. Was that getting rid of the dross? I think you could say yes. Because when they went in, all right, there was no questioning anymore. There's no questioning. They're going in. There was no hesitation concerning Jericho. There's no hesitation concerning whoever they might come across, because they knew God was going to help them. They knew it. And the very ones, and here's one of the lessons in it, the very ones that Israel would have protected, that being of their children. We're not going in there. Everybody's going to die, including our children. Those very ones that are children, they grew up and they went in, trusting God. And they didn't need the protection of the parents. They needed protection from God, is what they needed. And that there is dross that can be found whether in a nation, like with Israel. There can also be dross in an individual, in a single person, of things that need to be purified, and God tests the hearts. He knows what you're made of. He knows the purity that's there. He knows it. He knows the type of person you are. When Christ was on this earth, He knew the hearts of people. When He was on this earth, did He know who was going to betray Him? Yeah, He did. Yeah, He most certainly did. Did He know when they were wanting they were going to force Him to become king? Yeah, He knew that too. And He wasn't going to allow that. So God is the one that tests the hearts. And as we were saying, if you happen to be the gold to be refined, that whole process would be painful. It could be emotionally painful, it could be physically painful, but in the end of it, you have a pure bar of gold. In the end of it, you have someone who has been purified. All right, now, what God offers us is not painful. We can learn the easy way, or you can learn the hard way, and God will teach in many, many forms. He first offers the easy way. There's an easy way to learn, and that is, God said this, therefore I will do it. That's easy. That's the easy way. There are other easy ways. That way, that is of example. God said this, and here is someone also in the Bible that didn't do it, and this is the end result. This is someone who did do what God said, and this is the end result. Therefore, I take that example. Plus, I see individuals in my own life of where they're refusing God, and I see where they're ending up. Now, I can't see that they're ending up in torments. I can't see that. But I can see what's happening to their life. I can see the whirlwind that begins to spin around them. And I see the junk that is piling up in their lives and the baggage they are hauling. I can see that. And I can see that God's ways are better. Now that's still easy. But there's the harder way still. There's the hard way. And that is, we will call it the prodigal son's path. Leaving God, everything seems like a party. It could not be better until it crashes. And it will. You can enjoy sin for a season. And that term season is kind of ambiguous, isn't it? What does a season mean? Does that mean it's only for the spring? I don't know. Could it mean a couple of weeks? I don't know. Could it mean 50 years? I don't know that either. But it's only for a season. I doubt it'll be 50 years. It's only for a season. And with the prodigal son, it came to an abrupt stop. And he finds himself starving, feeding pigs out in the middle of nowhere. But he came to his senses. And he returns back to the Father. Now that is learning the hard way. He didn't have to experience any of that. Was it worth it? Was it worth it to all the partying, all the wasteful living, and everything that he did for that of ending up feeding pigs and starving? The pigs aren't starving. He is. Was it worth it? He'd say that it wasn't. It wasn't worth it at all. So he returns back to the Father. That is the solution. That is the solution. But it didn't have to be like that. He could have stayed with the Father at the Father's house and never experienced the hardship of it. Now, everybody proves God right. Everybody. From those who are obedient to God, they prove God right. Those who are disobedient to Him, hate Him, blasphemous to Him, they prove Him right too. They don't want to, but they prove Him right every single day. And sometimes oblivious to it. And you have the individual who, like the prodigal son, does end up there feeding swine and he's starving and yet will not go to God. All right, just stay right there. Just stay exactly right there and do not return. Not return. That's just the hard-headed person. That's precisely what that is. Now, let's go to verse 4 in this. An evildoer gives heed to false lips. A liar listens eagerly to a spiteful tongue. So notice we have an evildoer, and you have the liar. Evildoer gives heed to false lips, loves it, wants it. This is Proverbs 11 verse 9. The hypocrite with his mouth destroys his neighbor. 16 and verse 27. An ungodly man digs up evil. This is what they're after. The ungodly, the evildoer, the liar. Here are those that they want to hear the worst, concern, whether it's enemy or otherwise. To hear the worst, to dig up the dirt, to find out things, and you have heeding the false lips, eagerly listening to the spiteful tongue. All of this, well, that's no good. And we need to make a distinction because a distinction should be clear. There is a difference between that of hearing gossip and listening to gossip and also listening to something that isn't that isn't gossip, but something you actually need to know. All right? Now, let's just say you have a child. Has a friend. Somebody comes to you and tells you, you do realize that friend that your child is running around is a drug dealer. You might want to know that. Now, is that gossip? That's what you need to know. That's something you need to act upon, and act upon pretty quick. Now, if it's a lie, that's evil. But if it's the truth, someone giving you the truth that you need to know, that actually is kind. That's a loving thing to do. That here is information you need to know, so that you can make the decision you need to make. You go in and you intervene in all this, and you stop this. That's not someone who is digging up evil. That's someone that has to tell you something that you desperately need to know. In 1 Corinthians, there is a household that tells Paul what's going on at Corinth. It's Chloe's household. Was that a wrong thing to do? Is Chloe's household guilty of gossip or of digging up dirt? No. And spreading the dirt? No. It was something that needed to be communicated, needed to be told. Paul needed to know this. He needed to know it. And he can help the brethren at Corinth. Now, let's just say the congregation of Jerusalem, did they need to know from Chloe's household what was going on in Corinth? Well, not necessarily, but we do have the book of Corinth, the book of 1 Corinthians, that anybody would have seen, including the church in Jerusalem. So is Paul writing that letter, and that letter being spread out even to this day, is that spreading gossip or dirt? And the answer to that is no, because in it we are given a teaching. Even though we are far removed in numerous ways from that congregation as it existed, first century Corinth, we still can use that as a teaching method, and that is why we have it, so that we learn. So we make this distinction. We make this distinction, and we have to, of when is something gossip and when is something you need to know. And there is a distinction in all that. Okay, we have run out of time. I appreciate everybody being with us this morning. Hopefully next week Ron will be here, and you don't have to put up with me. Thank you.